Everybody to a special edition of Soul Speaks 5D. Let me just fix this. There we go. Better? All right. Let's just take a moment to recognize and acknowledge the sacredness of life, the fact that we can think and speak, experience, and create. And none of those things and others could we do unless we were alive. So we've spent all our lives being something we will always be as long as we are in this body. But this body that we associate ourselves with, such as me, Todd Medina, which you know as Todd Medina, is not all of us. It's a part of us. And there are infinite other parts of us. But since on or about 2012, we all know there's been a huge awakening. For some, it's come before. For some, it's come after. But we're in a quantum reality now, and in this quantum reality, once we become aware of something, we will embody that. We will tap into the beehive intelligence, which means through our interactions and our connections, we'll be able to obtain code, share code with each other. And in my own regard, in this incarnation, since May the 30th, 2011, as a universal, you, me, we, and it has spoken to me. It's always said to me, whatever you do, going forward, if you want to put the pieces together, if you want to expand as a soul, if you want to expand the collective, do something that's never been done before. And that's where we've all landed and continue to land, to a greater awareness of our abilities to create as the gods and goddesses that we are. In human form, at a level that's never been afforded before, in another of many golden ages that have come before us, and many that will come after this incarnation in this golden age. And in each one of these golden ages, the fullness of transformation through doing things that have never been done before, remixing, if you will, all the previous blueprints and templates, taking from all of the experiences that the Universal has had in its infinite, incomprehensible, omniscient fabric, pulling from what we might call the Akashic and the Living Library to this very conscious moment, we are given and have given to ourselves this opportunity to try something new. And every day is an awakening of a higher existence from the core of the universe, which is our heart and mind of spirit, what I call the I Am Soul. So, in this edition of Soul Speaks 5D, Todd Medina, host of 4,000 plus episodes and another couple thousand video productions in collaboration with others, is going to basically interview himself So this should be a little fun and something that's not been done before. I'm going to do my best to remain subjective in my questions, in my answers, separate my interviewer aspect from my guest aspect. So, having said that, thank you for listening to this introduction. And if this interests you, I encourage you to stick around and let's see what happens. And let me just say, I am pre recording this, and I think everybody knows how strongly I feel about live productions. But I felt like in this case, it would be a good idea to record it and play it as a live, so I don't want to mislead anyone. But what I will do is do my best when I go live with it to kind of field the comments and the questions that might come up on the different platforms. So let's take down the music. And let me just say, as I have said many times, big gratitude and appreciation to Ty Hudnall and his incredible vibrational resonance that he shares so openly with the world. I've been a fan of music for many, many years, really, since I was a young kid, and love to hear blends of different types of genres and sounds and cultures and in music and in sound. And he does an excellent job of that. So thank you, Ty. All right. First question. When did you wake up, Todd? When did I wake up? It's a very good question. I think the first time that I woke up, I was probably around, I want to say about a year and a half old, 18 months. Maybe I was two. I don't know. I don't think it would have been any older than that. I remember my mother and father and my brother, who's older. I'm the second oldest. Um, Maybe I have three sisters behind me, and a brother from my dad's second marriage, who I consider a full brother, of course. They came years later, but at this time I was about 18 months old, and I remember walking around the apartment that we were living in, or had been living in, and we were actually moving out on that day. The name of the apartments is the Buccaneer Apartments in Corpus Christi, Texas, right down from W.B. Ray High School, where my father graduated, I think in 1954, something like that. And a lot of my aunts and uncles went to. But I remember walking around, and it was a single story, first floor apartment. I remember seeing some windows, across the wall. And I remember walking on some type of solid floor, not a carpet. And I remember looking, as I was walking, looking out the windows, or seeing, through the windows, and being conscious. And I'll never forget that. It was like my first remembrance, anyway, at this point in my life, of being conscious in my body and saying, "Oh, wow, look at this, look around, wow." So I always remember that. I think that was probably it is the first conscious awakening that I had. I mean, technically, I know we wake up every day, but I feel like that's accurate for me. Through my childhood, I would say probably from the age of about 4, as I was going into nursery school and kindergarten, I can remember a lot of time. Um, we had eventually, my family moved into a house that we stayed at for a few years, where my parents began to, kind of assemble and raise their family and get established in the world. They were probably hitting their late 20s, early 30s at the time. But I remember in those years, and this would have been like 65, 66, 67. I remember as a 4, 5, 6, 7 year old, we had an incredible backyard. Now, by conventional standards, it wasn't anything extraordinary to maybe anyone else, but it was to me. I remember the backyard. That was kind of like my universe. The yard itself, actually, because I remember a tree in the front yard that I had a special relationship with. But in the backyard, we did. I don't think there was really any trees to speak of. I know there was a palm tree and such, but the backyard was, basically a big square kind of rectangle. But in the far left, from the coming out of the house, in the left side of the yard, was a rock pile. I don't know if any other of the homes in the neighborhood, I don't recall that they did, had a rock pile. And the rock pile was probably 20 feet, um, maybe 20 feet by 15 feet. It was stuck in the left corner of the backyard, full of a lot of small pieces of gravel, pebbles, and that type of thing. I don't know if the contractor that constructed the subdivision just kind of made it, from leftover stuff or what. I really don't know. I remember there was a big black lava rock, and that's kind of interesting. And I believe there were some other ones as well. Um, and I don't know. I spent a lot of time in the backyard playing by myself. I had an older brother. I was that younger brother that would always tag along, but much of the time when I hadn't met the standards of the hanging around the older boys at the neighborhood, there was a lot of them that were more his age or older. Um, I remember spending a lot of time back there. Like a lot of kids, I played in my own imagination. Back then, I didn't really understand the things that we begin to understand as we get older, and TV was just coming into, a bigger presence in the American culture. And so, I would catch glimpses of the news or see flashes of things. And I remember seeing the Vietnam War a lot. So war was really pushed out there. And so I would go in the backyard, and I can remember being in battle, with my favorite buddy. Jensen was his name. Jensen, let's go. Oh my God, Jensen got shot. Let me, get him and take him back to the hospital and get him saved. But I remember that. I remember being in the rock pile a lot. I remember now, as the past and the present and the future merge, I remember the rocks speaking to me a lot. Not really in a human language, but more of like, it was almost like, I don't want to say my safe haven, or, and let me just say, as I'm recollecting, I said it was 20 by 15 in the left corner. I really don't know how big it was. To me, it seemed like it was that big. I mean, I was a little kid, but it was. But I do remember the big lava rock, and I remember it being more prominent when we first moved in, and maybe grass started, you know, intruding in it, and minimizing the aesthetics of it, that, as time went on. But I remember being in the rock pile, and I remember having my astronaut figurines, Major Matt Mason, with the lunar module and different things that were associated with those toys at the time that were being pushed onto our culture with the whole space program, the Apollo space program. And I remember being out there with my little figurines and exploring the planet that was my rock pile, and really kind of, I guess, being really familiar with it. Being familiar with landing on a planet and exploring that planet and the rawness of that planet and the, you know, the exploratory curiosity of the soul being utilized or being implemented and initiated and experienced through uh, my new incarnation, Todd, right? But I remember that very well. And I remember just having a real uh, high affinity for, I guess you would say, exploration of the cosmos or universes or planets or that type of thing. So I remember that. Um, I also remember I had a tree, or we had a tree in the front yard. It wasn't a huge tree, but it was a pretty good sized tree. It was big enough that there was a branch that kind of one of the I think one of the first branches that came off of the trunk, and I don't know because I was smaller then, so it could have been the dimensions, like I said about the dimensions in the of the rock pile. Um, I could be off a little bit, but it was a tree that was in the front yard, and I can remember sitting on. I was able to get up the tree and sit on that first branch that came out of the trunk, and I was able to sit there. It was pretty good size. I mean, it could probably would have fit, two, certainly two, maybe four of me or children my age. And one day, I remember sitting there, and it was probably 5:30 or 6 in the afternoon. The sun's going down. It's kind of like, in the west, and the west is to my left, and it's coming across my face. And I remember many times in my childhood, and later on, and certainly now, hearing the universal cicada, hearing tones, getting information, but not really knowing it then, of course. I just recall these things as we do when we um, collapse timelines or elevate or however you want to put it. I always have said, for me anyway, that the past, present, and future merge. So it's a bit difficult at times to kind of put this stuff together on a linear basis. But I remember sitting there, and I remember feeling, knowing that there was somebody sitting next to me. But the somebody sitting next to me, I couldn't see with my two eyes, but I could feel him, and it was a him. And he had a name, and his name was Isaiah. Now I didn't know one Isaiah from the other at the time. This Isaiah would come to me um, in 2012, or yeah, 20 early 2012, um, and reacquaint himself with me and me with him. But I remember sitting next to this entity or this energy, and there was an incredible heart expansion, a knowing everything's okay. Almost, even though I couldn't have said it at the time or wouldn't even been able to explain it or know it, even possibly, that this wasn't all there was to it. That I was from somewhere, you know, I'm from the earth, but from somewhere else as well, and that there was a God, and that uh, there was a balance to the universe and things like this. And again, as a little kid, I couldn't have explained this all, but I understood certain things at the time. I think another very important recollection or remembrance was when I would go to sleep at night. When I would go to sleep at night, I shared a room with my brother. There was two windows in the corner of our room. One on each wall, kind of like where the wall came together, right? So there'd be one on each side of that corner, and the one that was on the back looked right out into that rock pile. We called it a rock pile, or rock garden, or whatever you want to call it. And I remember many nights going to sleep. It was dark, and looking out the window and hearing things. Um, and again, it was much of the time the universal cicada, the tones, and that type of thing. But there were also some, what I would call tones or sounds of distortion. And many of these involved what at the time were figures or entities or images that scared me. Some of these were gargoyles, lava monsters, reptile type creatures. Many times I was being traced. There's a Freudian slip. Um, Many times I was being chased. And then there was this one particular um, energy, and that energy was a bull. It was a black bull, mature black bull with horns, two horns like a regular bull you'd see in a bullfight. And his presence was so strong that he would, with each, it would be such an impact on me that my heart would start to race. Now it wouldn't race, but it would feel like it was going to beat out of my chest. And with each beat, I could see the bull jumping from one backyard to the other. Not necessarily coming to get me or anything, but would just be jumping from one backyard to the other. And I often wonder about that. I'm not a Taurus, but I kind of identify with the bull. On the Chinese calendar, I'm an ox. I don't know, I'm not trying to make any correlations or anything. I'm just trying to put it all out there as my soul, me, is guiding me to do. So I know this is a long answer from Todd Medina, the guest, but these things I remember very well as awakening moments, even though they may not be one instantaneous moment all the time. I would say that there was another time when I was probably about 6, maybe 7, and I was riding my bicycle, my green bike. I forget what brand those were, but they were real popular. Um, and I was exploring the neighborhood as the big kids did and going further and further out into other streets. And I remember I went down this street, probably 4 or 5 or 6 residential blocks from my house, from my street. And I was on the sidewalk, and um, there I was coming off the sidewalk out of a driveway, I guess, onto the street, right into the middle of the street as a kid, not really knowing the danger and such. And there was a car to my left as I came out, and I'm headed left. I'm going to make a left turn, or at least that was my intention. And that car was evidently blocking the sight of a driver. And I remember very clearly there were 3 teenagers in this car. And as I came out from behind the car and darted into the street, um, I clearly saw these 3 teenagers. I heard one of them scream, and then in that moment, I felt a hand pick me up and move me. My bike, me, and everything out of the way. The car whizzed by. My heart raced, and I'm sure that I raced home, freaking out. That was an awakening moment as well for me, uh, because I knew that something or someone had, in human terms, saved my life. This uh, next one I would say that I can recall was, and there were many little ones I can go into, like, when I went to kindergarten, when I went to nursery school. I remember different episodes. I can remember having these experiences where I would be in my home, where it was my parents and 4 other brothers and sisters, a brother and 3 sisters, and myself. Um, and I can remember my parents liked to have parties and entertain. It seemed like we were a big Mexican family and we had many cousins and that type of thing. But my parents were also very social, and I can remember them having quite a few get-togethers. And when we would have these get-togethers, I was kind of shy, and I would like stay by myself. Sometimes as time went on, I guess as I got older, my brother and cousins or whoever was visiting, I would participate with them. But I remember being able to walk. It seemed like, I'll just explain it the best way I can. I would walk into the lounge, the den, the living room area, where all these people were, and everybody was frozen. Everybody was frozen, like somebody pressed pause, and I would walk around. And I remember that happened more than once. So that was another wake up experience that I would kind of spend time thinking about as a kid. And I didn't really talk to people about this because, you know, it just wasn't something that I did. Um, but there were, quite a few episodes, and I believe that as we all get further along, we're going to remember more and more of this type of stuff if we don't already. I think it's important to talk about these things so that it activates code, further code within ourselves, and code within the mirrors that are exposed or that we are presented to, and vice versa. I remember being in the eighth grade, um, and I think a lot of us, some of us anyway, can identify, not necessarily when we're that age, 13, 14 years old, times in our lives when everything was in full alignment. And a lot of times this will happen as we become uh, young adults, right? Begin to really start to have confidence in our field of energy and that type of thing. And it can happen at different times as well, I'm sure. It does happening for many, many people now. But I remember walking around, in junior high, and you walk through the halls before school starts, and everybody's just walking around saying, "Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up?" It's just kind of like the way things were, kind of like when you get older and everybody goes to the parking lot in high school and drives their car through and acts cool and all that stuff. And I remember walking down the hall, through all the halls, on the promenade with a girlfriend uh, that has been in, not so much in recent years, but would be in my lucid dreams constantly for years after that, into my 30s and even 40s. And so I remember I was walking with her, and I heard this voice, and the voice said, "You are at the center of the universe." And in that moment, I had the coolest, best looking chick was my girlfriend. I was becoming a pretty good basketball player, and one of the better players, one of the better players on the team, and just kind of blossoming, I guess. And things were going well. And I just remember that moment. I remember that moment as sure as I'm sitting here. I can be right there. So that was an awakening moment for me. I think the next time was probably when I was about 16, and I had a Volkswagen bus, one of those old hippie buses, and me and a bunch of friends went to the lake during the summer. I drove, and same thing that happened when I was 6 or 7 on my bicycle happened, and I was driving, and and I wasn't looking, and at the very last second, uh, I look up and I see I'm going to hit this line of cars that were backed up, I think at a stop sign or something had happened. So the traffic was backed up where it hadn't been before, or possibly I was um, an inexperienced driver that just wasn't paying attention. But right as I was knew I was going to have the impact, I felt a hand again, just like before, lift the entire bus and move it over to the shoulder, and that's what happened, And that was another one. I thought, oh, it's still here. I remember having this connection and conversation with what we call higher self or soul most every night of my life. Certainly, um, as I got older, it seemed to be, up to that age in high school. I would, kind of have these reviews with myself and that type of thing. And then, into my 20s and 30s, marriage, jobs, businesses, we start to get all these different streams of experience, kind of expanding our total experience. And so, but I never lost sight. I never stopped praying. I never stopped looking. I began to voraciously read from about 23, 22, things that were of substance, um, and did that for many years. But but there were many experiences, paranormal experiences in my second marriage with my, lived next to a cemetery and so on. So there were many little wake up experiences. I think if we look back in our lives, we'll see that they were always there, constantly revisiting us, you might say. Uh, when I was 37 years old, I was working in corporate America, and I was on a flight, and I started having seizures, to my knowledge, when I was 15 years old. And I had these seizures, grand mal seizures, technically, I guess. I never went to a doctor about it. But from about 15 years old to 50, I had somewhere between 150 and 200. I'd have, probably 5 to 7 seizures a year. And they would last, I guess, just less than a minute, but they seemed like lifetimes. And when I was 37, I had this seizure on an airplane. And it was the first time that I'd ever had a seizure where I retained consciousness. And at that time, I was on the tail end of a marriage. Energetically, I could feel the separation occurring. I knew something was going on. I'd reached the pinnacle of my profession. Um, and I was actually on a plane headed to my first major promotion. I was going from San Antonio to Chicago. And, um, and I remember telling the stewardess I'm going to have a seizure. And then I blacked out and had a, what they call an NDE, or an out of body. And I was shot out of my body like a cannon. And I can remember feeling the coldness and the density of my human body. I was projected out, and I come into a space, um, and it was like you see in the movies where there's like this little cloud cover that's like 2 feet high, and you can't see, like, below your ankles. And I remember I was gliding. I wasn't walking. I was gliding, uh, and and I remember talking to myself the whole time. I was like, "Oh my God, I just got shut out of my body. What's going on? Wow! I can feel the coldness, the dampness, the density of my body as I'm leaving it," which didn't make any sense to me, because how could I feel my body if I was out here being projected into space? Um, so I start gliding, and I see this figure off in the distance, and it's a very tall figure, and it seems to be revolving like a lazy Susan, very slowly, just kind of revolving around. Its hands were up. It was a human type figure with its hands up, and as I got closer to it, it revolved right to where it was facing me, and it was a beautiful, beautiful woman, you know. And I remember coming up to her and going, thinking to myself, wow, I wonder if she's pretty, you know. And I look at her, and she had a porcelain face. It looked like Mother Mary. And whether it was Mother Mary, Mother Goddess, a guardian angel, whatever, but I know that energy is the mother, right? As sure as I'm sitting here. And, and I said to her, where am I? Because all I could feel was peace and love. And it was incredible. And at that time, she said to me, "You're on an airplane. Uh, you've left your body, uh, and you're at a choice point." And I said, "Well, I made the choice. I don't want to go anywhere. I'm going to stay here, even though I don't see anybody else around. And I just feel like, this is incredible. I don't. Why would I want to leave here?" And she said, "Well, you've already made your choice. I'm just here to explain it to you." Now, at this time, I'm, like I said, at the tail end of a first marriage. I got 3 beautiful kids, a really good wife, even though we were energetically kind of coming apart or separating or going our different directions. Um, and she said, you have to go back now. And I said, well, I don't want to go back. She said, you have to go back now because there are people waiting on you. And I said, come again? And she said, she started to name names, names that I knew, but that I didn't know consciously as a human being. And she named my second wife and my three children that would come from that marriage, and a few others um, that turned out to be like friends or business, close business acquaintances. And so, as she told me this, just as quick as I had come, I start gliding away from her. And I can see her just like I had seen her as I was coming up, and she starts revolving again. And by the way, she was about 12 feet tall. She had huge golden wings, huge, and and she was just beautiful. She looked like many of the sculptures or you know um, expressions of the Mother Mary. I would say Mother Mary, uh, Yemanja, Virgin of Guadalupe, Lady of Fatima, that type of thing. And so I went back, and as I'm going, and the same thing happened, but in reverse, I could feel the whoosh, and I was headed back towards the earth, you might say. And I could begin to start to feel that coldness and that density and the dampness of my body. And I thought, oh my God, I'm on a plane. I've had a seizure. I hope I didn't pee my pants or defecate or vomit because I'm in the air, and I had passed out right in the galley, just between first class and the cockpit. And so, sure enough, I landed back in my body, and I'm laying on the ground, and I'm looking at a stewardess, looking up, basically up her dress, and uh, and again, these things only take like I would say less than a minute, but for me, it seemed like years. So anyway, obviously, that was another wake up experience that I didn't really get a lot of answers on, but I think looking back, at least in my own regard, many of the wake ups, really all of the wake ups I've had, I don't, on a linear basis, understand everything as it comes. And I had a few more things happen, and I suppose the next really big one, really many episodes as years go on. Particularly, that was 37 then. I would say particularly from about 45 to 50, 45, well, 45 onward, I would say. On May the 30th at 1:11 in the morning, and I know this, and I didn't know anything about 11:11 or 1:11s or numbers or anything. I was had four kids in the house, my second wife. Um, Things were very dark, and no need to get into personal details, but a huge physical, emotional, mental, and financial burden on my shoulders. I'd gone from a six-figure career, very successful, to being on welfare and just hanging on by the skin of my teeth. But spiritually, I was only getting stronger as much as my human hurt. So I would play the guitar at night by myself um, until they were gone. Uh, they were kind of broke, let's just say, or destroyed. So I started to teach myself how to dance, and I would turn on a couple of CDs that I'd gotten from the library, and after the kids went to bed, this was how I got my head together, or I guess my soul together. This would have been May 30th, 2011, 1:11 in the morning. I'd been down there for a while, and I would, dance, and I would like watch my shadow on the fence, and that's how I kind of learned, or at least that was my way of learning how to dance. And at the time, my wife sent me a text from upstairs. Now, we hadn't really spoken in 8 days. Um, she had some human challenges. A lot of people that have sight onto the other side, what I would say it this way, that have sight onto the other side more frequently throughout their day, struggle in to human existence. I know things are changing as the physical and the non-physical merge, but at this time, 2011, at least in my environment, uh, it was a very difficult situation, especially with kids in the house and all the burdens that that you can have. So she sent me a note and she said, "Are you coming up?" And that's why I knew it was 111, because I had actually started to put the computer up and turn the music off and was getting ready to go to bed. She sends me the text. I thought, oh. And I just happened to notice it because on the text it says the time, right? And it's 111. I'm like, okay, it's time to go to bed. Um, and I said, I'll be right up. And so as soon as that, I put the phone down, I looked up into, we lived next to a cemetery that had a lot of very large trees. We had a fence in our courtyard, and then on the other side of the fence was this huge cemetery that I would spend a lot of time in over the years after, um, which is which is a whole other story. This is a long answer, Todd the guest. So maybe this is just the way that I won't go into this, trying to express something uh, that we all share in a physical way through verbalization. I don't really know. I'm just going to do this thing and we'll put it out. So I looked up into the kind of like glanced up into the trees. And these trees are really big. Um, this townhouse was 2 stories, and I would say some of these trees were, and a 2 story townhouse or home is probably 35, 35 feet, depending on the roof line, maybe even 40 feet. Some of these trees were, I would say, double the size of that. So as I looked up into the trees, I saw this huge white light. It looked like almost like the moon or a star was barreling down onto the earth, and it was coming through the illumination of it was coming through the trees right towards me, almost like a meteor is coming right at you, right? And so uh, I went, whoa, and I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden the the light turned into the face of of Yeshua, of Jesus, of Christ, or whatever you want to call it. It was a face that I recognized. Now, later on, after I figured things out, I realized this was my higher self. This is the you, me, we, and it trying to communicate with me. There was a tremendous amount of stress and just chaos and, lots of things that were just very, very difficult. And it was all just coming down. I'd had some things occur in the previous couple of weeks where I actually was hearing audible voices telling me, get out of this situation. And I'm thinking, how the hell can I do that? I can't leave my family and so on and so on. So I looked up at the this face and um, I see the face of the cosmic Christ of my higher self, whatever that is, the you, me, we, and it. And he's got this huge smile. Have you ever seen somebody that has beautiful, shiny white teeth and just has the most beautiful smile ever? And he was just smiling at me, and it was telepathic. His lips didn't move, but I could clearly see his jaw, but and everything else. It was very clear, his eyes. And I looked up at him, and he was laughing, but laughing as a parent does at a child when they're taking something too seriously. That's how I've always explained it. And so um, I looked at him and I said, let's see, he said to me, I know what it was. He said to me, because I kind of said, what's going on? And he says, what are you so worried about? And I said, what do you mean? Now, this is a telepathic conversation that probably took like 10 or 20 seconds. I don't know. Certainly wasn't like minutes. And I said, what do you mean? I mean, like I got 4 kids in the house. I mean, my wife's struggling. A lot of psychotic episodes were occurring. I was getting more and more imbalanced, I guess you would say, as well. And he said, I don't know what you're so worried about. I've been watching over your family for 2.5 years. Well, 2.5 years earlier, my wife at the time, I rest her soul, uh, rest in power. Um, she had um, very similar circumstances of the dynamics within the household at the time, not as severe, but severe, by most standards. This was now uh, ultra severe. But 2.5 years earlier, she had gotten up from the bed, walked downstairs. I'm, right behind her, going, "What's going on?" It's like 3 in the morning, and she just grabbed a bottle of Tylenol PM that had just been opened, just been purchased, and I believe there was, estimated, probably like 75 uh, Tylenol PMs, and she just I never seen anything like it. She just turned it and swallowed them. Boom, like just enough time for me to get over there and grab her, and that's a whole other story. That's a whole other spiritual experience. Another wake up experience occurred. That was 2.5 years earlier in the hospital, uh, and maybe one day I'll talk about it. But anyway, that's what had occurred 2.5 years earlier, and so when he said that, something had happened that had happened when I had the out of body experience, but it happened in a different way. This this wave came down from my head, and it wasn't just in my body. It felt like it was around me, almost like that hand that moved my bike or moved my Volkswagen bus out of the way. Uh, but I could feel it like a plasma wave come down from my head, went through my body to my feet, and it was that same uh, consciousness or feeling or whatever you would call it of peace and love. Just this wave, and I went, "Whoa, wow!" And it just brought me back to, um, to me. And I looked back up at him, and his beautiful smile with the little kind of laugh turned into more laughter. But again, this laughter wasn't like anything demeaning or anything like that. It was almost like he was saying, "Well, now you know everything's all right, but now you're really going to find out." So I said to him, "What's that all about? Like, why are you laughing harder?" And he said to me, "Because now we're going to find out. You are the one of the unshakable faith. Your whole world is going to turn upside down tomorrow. And we're going to find out, basically, how far you can take this. You are the one of the unshakable faith." So I hear this, and I'm going from like peace and love, and it's still there, I guess, but to what the hell is going to happen here? Like what? And he says, "Just remember, you are never alone and you are never forsaken." And it was like, and I told this story before, but it was like the way he said it was like we're sitting at the dinner table, all of us, and somebody says, "Hey, can you pass me the butter?" So the wow and the shock wasn't there. The awakening moment was there, no question about it. And I just calmly put my stuff together and unknowingly went upstairs and basically slept with my wife and slept in the same house with all my children, which I'd had children in my house for 23 years, um, for the last time. And that was, I guess you would say, the beginning of the Todd Medina that most people know. Um, that was the beginning, May 30th, 111, 2011. May the 30th, 111, 2011. I just figured that out. It was 2011. So, yeah, the next day I woke up and then everything started. And 6 weeks later, I went homeless. And I won't go into all that stuff now. Have I had wake up experiences since then? Absolutely. many, many times. Um, Many, many, many times. Many divine episodes, especially in the first couple of years from that point, where I chose by my own volition to go homeless, and to develop, and in the process developing a conscious, uh, constant communication or communion, I would call it, with the universal. And it was the basis or the foundation of my awakening in those things that were created from that standpoint, uh, as many of us, or really all of us, as conscious incarnated souls that are putting the pieces together and applying our own um, contribution to the collective transformation, you might say. But I would say that uh, there were many from that point on, um, and we're coming up on an hour. Uh, so that was only one question, and I haven't even completed that answer. But but I guess maybe I'll talk just for 3 or 4 more minutes on it. We're at 51 minutes. And the reason really that I feel like that, and again, I didn't know what I was going to do. I've been in silence for, let's see, I want to say about 8 hours. 8 hours I was in silence, laying on my bed, on my air mattress here in the studio. And since this morning, and just in silence, and just I was going in and out of dream state at times, or it felt like it was. There was some lucid stuff happening. So the reason that I feel like that my soul, that is me, uh, has put me into this transmission, is to kind of further uh, the reality of and the importance of um, awakenings, and that they really never stop. Um, Many people know my story from that point, um, but I can tell you they're virtually every day awakenings. But as far as major points that have occurred, uh, certainly being given the name Sology on March the 10th, 2012, um, the other side of truth, as the consciousness of Archangel Michael um, told me the definition was, to, you know, riding from the street, to putting my words to images when I came off the street, to making videos. One of the, I guess a lot of people, or I think many people know about the huge awakening I had on September the 3rd at 3:33 a.m. Houston, Texas time, in 2015, when I connected by messenger to a woman by the name of Morgan Lee. And that was the biggest awakening I've ever had. Instant. That message transmission back and forth, and then a phone call in my morning a few hours later. Um, Massive amounts of code and information and memory came in, and many people know our story from there. Quite extraordinary. We had many divine episodes. It's a whole different thing to experience divine episodes and apparitions and such um, by yourself, because when there's somebody else seeing the same thing that you're seeing and experiencing the same thing you're experiencing, it's a whole different ballgame. And yet, I find it interesting that all of us, me included, still doubt. Having experienced things like that, we still doubt. But I think we're doing that less and less. We had many episodes, and we've talked about it over the years. And I think it's important to bring these back, because I'm understanding from my soul that people will remember. They think they have not had these episodes, and we, and I'm included here, look at other people over the years, and we say, oh wow, they do this or they experience that, but I don't. The only reason that you don't, it's not about that you just don't remember. And the reason you don't remember, or the reason we don't remember, I should put myself in there for sure, is because we think it hasn't happened, or we think it couldn't have happened, or we think, whatever. If we can block out traumas, which is proven, we can block out these type of events as well. Okay, because they're so extraordinary, even more extraordinary than the physical traumas we've endured. And I haven't endured anything compared to most people. Um, but we had many divine episodes and extraordinary travels and grid work, and we documented really all of this over the years. And then I would say another wake up experience that occurred was not too long ago. It was on the 9th of November, uh, Southern Hemisphere, 8th of November, uh, Northern Hemisphere. I woke up and I heard a pop, and I heard my soul's voice very clearly say, "You're on. You all are on the other side now. Nothing over there can touch you. Nothing over there is coming with you. You can bring it, but the more you bring, the less you'll experience this new golden age, and the longer it will take." Morgan and I had been separated for 11 and a half weeks, and it was a very difficult time. And I had no idea that we would get back together, so to speak. I knew that we were connected in every single dimension beyond this one. And so I woke up that morning and I said to myself, okay, now what am I going to do with this? I'm going to send her a message. I need to start here and just say, just say whatever comes. No intention of getting back together, just wanting to bring balance and alignment to my life and hopefully to that person's as well. And so I did. That was the biggest awakening I've had in the last few, what would that be, 3 months, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And so, here we are. I think that about 5 weeks later, ended the third Solargy Fest in 3 years, 3 powerful years, because about 3 years or 2.5 years before that last Solargy Fest in December of 2023, Morgan and I had been traveling together, living together for almost 3 years, and she needed to go back to Australia right when COVID hit, and that was another awakening. And again, awakenings to me aren't just instantaneous events all the time. My awakening as a result of her going back to Australia, which is still the case, but I would say up until the 9th of November 2023. So from April of 2021 to November of 23, that was an awakening, an entire awakening of self-introspection and expansion and working through things, like shadow work and zero pointing, and also experiencing things, divine episodes and such. And again, during and since that time, there's been more and more and more. And there continues to be. I look at January, I look at February, and it's only the 6th here in the Northern Hemisphere. And there's already been, I haven't sat and counted them or anything, but there's been several. And it's my inclination that this is the way things are going to go, that we're going to have an increasing frequency throughout what we call each month, where it used to be one a month, then it's two, and then three, and then five, and then eventually every day and every moment will be an experience of consciousness in incarnated form that will be what we used to call an awakening. It's it's an awareness, and it's growing and expanding by leaps and bounds. 1 hour on the dot. So this is just kind of a, you know, improvisational, spontaneous, creative, purely intended um, expression um, from my heart. It's not so much the words, it's the entire vibrational resonance. I'm not saying I'm anything because I'm understanding from my united soul and human to be as transparent as possible uh, in the work that I do, whatever it may be. I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what to do, and I know that Sology and Todd and Morgan and all of us will continue on. But this new, more and more frequent, ultimately always present, awakening conscious experience, uh, awareness will be full time, that getting normalized or used to the way it works and feels is more important than implementing things in a rushed or forced fashion. So I hope this helps people. I really meant to have an interview with myself. That's the way that it came in when I turned this thing on. Um, but it just went to one question and then I just went off. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody else. I'm not worried about views. I'm not worried about anything, likes or anything. I'm just doing what my united soul and human consciousness have guided me to do. And I do understand to a degree that it's all about this vibrational resonance and the unified fields acknowledgement and utilization, implementation, initiation, which is contagious. And as we walk into that field and in a united soul and human consciousness, that it will be contagious to all the mirrors that see it. So I hope this helps. I don't really like the word hope. My intent is that this helps. It's been my intent um, for 12 plus years to um, do the best I can to represent uh, the base element of the universal, the Trinity, um, and to serve myself, others, and the collective in equal fashion. Um, be yourself, acclimate with this new awareness that's far beyond just me or you. Um, encourage you, and as I always have, but more so now than ever, be yourself, be transparent. Um, judgment is going away, but it's not gone. Um, have the conversations, the interview that's most important um, with yourself, human and soul. Uh, and do just keep doing what we've been doing, which is clearing the field of its distortion within ourselves and as within without. Peace, power, protection, and big ass love, as we used to say all those years in the early days of Sology. Uh, endless gratitude, love, honor, respect, and reverence. All blessings to you and yours. And I will see you when I put this out very shortly because my soul, that is me, is telling me I got to do it. Peace.